Hi, I'm Steve Mersil in Portland, Oregon, on my way to Cape Disappointment. I'm gonna ride this bike 3,700 miles across the country to Portland, Maine, in order to raise money for a fellowship that will allow young people to learn about angel investing and entrepreneurship. In other words, help them create an entrepreneurial mind. It's sort of like the non-Hollywood version of Shark Tank. So check out my website, bizInMotion.org, to learn about our fellowship program and to follow the ride. We're going to be interviewing entrepreneurs and other characters along the way. So hopefully you'll find some really fun stories about the Odyssey and you'll enjoy following the ride. And also please consider donating. Check that subscription button and follow the ride. Please support this cause. Thanks. This is Steve Mersil, and I'm in Red Wing, Minnesota. And for those out there who don't know where Red Wing, Minnesota is, it's just south of Minneapolis, about 45, 50 miles. Sits along the beautiful Mississippi River. It's a port town. People may have bought or know about Red Wing shoes. But Red Wing is more than just shoes and more than a port city. It's becoming a fintech center. And we have Susan Langer, the CEO of Live.Give.Save, who has a fintech application that she is bringing out to the world, and we're going to learn and talk about that. And one of the reasons we're here in Red Wing is because we have an angel group called the Golden Triangle Fund, and Susan's company at Live.Give.Save was their first investment back in about 2018. So Susan has been an entrepreneur going through all the trials and tribulations of founding a company and developing the company, and she recently sold the company to a strategic investor, and there was a big community celebration last night. So we're going to talk about that journey. So hi, Susan.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me here today.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
And last night was a lot of fun.
It sure was. It was amazing to see all the people come out and to make the connections with everyone. And thank you for standing up and saying a few words when you didn't even know that you were going to do that.
Well, it was pretty easy being able to stand up and talk about you and the organization, what you've done. So the first question I have a little bit is just tell everybody a little bit about what Live, Give, and Save is, and about your application, Spave, and how it works.
Yeah, so Live.Give.Save was formed out of an idea that came to me when I traveled to Africa in 1995. And I met women living in abject poverty who were micro-entrepreneurs receiving micro-loans, and they were paying them back at a 99% repayment rate. At the time, I was marketing the nation's largest credit card portfolio, and I can tell you we were not seeing those kinds of returns. Instead, we were seeing, a dearth of savings and, an acceleration of spending. And I thought, how can we take the principles of microfinance and micropayments and apply them to help people more easily save and more easily give? So that's how the idea all came about.
So when was it that you went to your immediate family, I'm thinking probably your spouse,
Yeah.
and said, honey, I have this dream or vision or idea. What do you think about it? And by the way, it's going to, we're going to have to put some money into this thing. So tell me a little bit about when you had that conversation and how did that go?
That was interesting, to say the least. My husband is risk averse. First of all, he worked for the state of Minnesota almost his whole career for 28 years and has since retired from the state of Minnesota. And he trusted me, and I assured him it was just going to be like 3 years we would be able to get out of this. And that wasn't the case, of course. We ended up draining my entire IRA. We also had to mortgage our house to secure it with some financing that we got here from the Red Wing Port Authority. And not only did we not pay the loan back on time at the Port Authority, thank goodness they gave us an extension, but we were unable then to secure a home equity loan because our mortgage, our home had a lien on it. So that caused consternation with my husband for sure, but with all of the support that we were getting from other individuals, other family members, friends, and the Golden Triangle, that gave him some assurance that there was going to be funding out there to get us through to the next level, and sure enough, it did. So I want to thank the Golden Triangle for investing in us and investing in me and believing in what we could do so that we could celebrate last night.
Well, the Golden Triangle, it was formed to back people like you. So for folks that don't exactly know what we do, the Appalachian Investors Alliance and myself form angel funds and communities and bring wealthy individuals together to form a formal fund
that then tries to invest their capital in emerging and potential entrepreneurs with growth opportunities in their community and in their region. And Susan was really their first step into that world, really. And at the end of the day, they invested because they trusted Susan to do the best she could to get this off the ground and fight through all the barriers and obstacles and get to a point where this could get launched and be successful, and they had a chance of getting their money back. And you've done that, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Just walk me through a little bit you did this last night, kind of the phased in and out of the history, you know. You started it in 2016, I believe, and then you did some things, and then you did a round of financing in about 2018, because I think that's when the Golden Triangle came in, and just kind of walk through the basic kind of phases from start to acquisition.
Yes, and you asked me last night if you were in the first round or the second round. If it was 2018, it was the second round, because I started the germination of the idea, and I left General Mills. We had started a nonprofit out of their foundation, and we had launched it, and it had been 4 or 5 years, and so it was ready. It was on its own, had its own wings. I then decided I wanted to venture out on my own, and that was 2015, and I started talking to the Nerdery and getting some ideas about that. And as you're looking at things and you know that you need to raise some money, you have to have a bank account. In order to get a bank account, I had to have some financials. In order to get a loan from the Port Authority, I had to have the business plan and the financials. So I started to do all of those things and meeting with all of those different people. I think we probably even met sometime in there when I was here at Red Wing Ignite after meeting Neela Molgard. So once I got those things in line, I could incorporate.
So you didn't have a fully formed, you had a concept of what you wanted to do, not a fully formed business strategy necessarily.
Yeah, and then we had people here from Red Wing Ignite that joined me at a workshop at the Nerdery. This was in 2015.
So explain what the Nerdery is.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Folks like
the Nerdery is a development firm, and at that time they really helped. They were a startup technology development firm, so they helped people develop their technologies or companies.
So their actual software and their code, they did coding and that?
They did coding, yes. They helped us with our first prototypes.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 2 prototypes with them. But before we could do a prototype, we had to do a design thinking workshop. Mm-hmm. And so I brought people, Sherry Chorney from the Port Authority, Neela Molgard from Red Wing Ignite, Kirsten Ford, a marketing specialist, my chair of the board at the time, Mark Thine from the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. All of us got together, and then we did this 2-day session of design thinking, and so that they could formulate a prototype for us. That prototype then was used to present to investor groups like the Golden Triangle or to the Smith Foundation, Southern Minnesota Initiative. And they have, the Southern Minnesota Initiative has grants, so that's perfect for a startup because then you don't have to pay that back, right?
Yeah, right.
So then, but we didn't get a grant from them yet until later on. But with that prototype, then you go to the next level. So then now we got a prototype. I did raise money from family and friends, $207,500, that then got me to the next level to create a beta. And a beta is actually your application, but not with live data.
Yeah, so just to rewind a little bit for everybody that's listening in. The first thing, so you had the idea, and you had these different community assets that helped you. And for we mentioned Red Wing Ignite. Red Wing Ignite is a nonprofit for the city of Red Wing, but reaches out around the region, and it's an economic development organization. And I like to say they're really a leader in convening the right people, business and entrepreneurs, to get things done in the region, help people get capital, raise capital, germinate their idea into a real opportunity. That's what they do. So you had this Nerdery, and you had this concept, and you had a little bit of money, and you developed the first sort of potential beta.
Mm-hmm. We also then, so what did you use those funds for is the question. I get $207,000, so we used that for the beta, but we also did, I missed a little piece in there, which is we conducted focus groups, so primary research. Those focus groups validated our concept and helped shape a little bit of some of the branding and the messaging that we would do, and formulated how the app needed to perform, the user experience, if you will. So we used what we did with the design thinking group, and then what we learned from our focus groups to create then that beta. And the beta then app that we used, we created a beta champions, control beta champions, and that was comprised of the Red Wing Shoe Company. You mentioned them early on. the Red Wing YMCA, and the Red Wing Credit Union. All three of those are involved in the integration piece of it. So you have a financial institution, you have a nonprofit, and you have an employer. Employees like to give back to their community. So we allowed the employer to choose the nonprofit that they wanted to give back to. So we had a handful of employees from Red Wing Shoe and the Red Wing Credit Union that wanted, and the Red Wing Credit Union was watching, how does this work? Could we take that into our credit union and integrate that into our mobile app?
So let's talk a little bit before we go on about exactly what the app does and the branding of the app. But walk us through exactly what your application does for the consumer of that application.
Great. So I'm not sure of your audience, but I'll just say this real quick and then pull it all together. But our app really is several apps all in one. It functions like Mint, which is a budget app, Acorns, which rounds up spare change and puts it into a mutual fund, Digit, that has an algorithm that's designed to watch your income and your spending, what's going in and out of your checking account, and then they decide for you what they'll take from your checking and put into your savings. That's kind of scary, but it's pretty cool, and I guess it works. And then there's also the United Way that gives back to the community, and Venmo. So in our app, instead of opening up 5 apps, you open up one app and you can do all of that and more. So that's the function of what it does. So the idea is to help people use their spending. So the spending is the igniter. So we go about our day and we spend, and we don't really even think about it. We never feel like we have enough to give at the end, and we're not saving as a society. That is shown by statistics. But with this now, every time you spend, you can save for your future or give to the causes that you care about without changing your behavior. So that's how it works. So
it's a little bit like some people might be familiar when they go to the local co-op food place or some other place, and they said, you want to round up?
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, it's a little bit like you taking control of how you want to use that roundup for essentially your benefit, whether it's put some money in savings. You make sure you're automatically putting money in savings as you spend without thinking about it. So you're truing up to your savings, or truing up to your retirement account, or truing up to a cause that you want to support based on your spending habits. And that's what makes this application unique. Not only is it all these things in one, it changes a little bit the paradigm on how you go about saving for the things that will be important to you. Exactly. Well, there's a lot of talk out in the ether, I guess, if you will, about financial wellness. Many people talk about financial wellness. And when I was doing the research on this, I came to realize when you look at financial wellness, they're analyzing, your spending, your mortgage, your credit, your insurance, everything except giving. And I thought, that is insane. Why would you not look at giving when you're looking at an analysis of financial wellness? We know that when we give, there are health benefits to giving. I mean, there's things that go off in your brain, the serotonin and whatever all that is. It is so important. And so we also, in our research that we recently did with consumers, we learned that consumers don't necessarily include giving in their formulation of their model of personal financial management, which I thought was astounding. But in reality, it is. So there's an opportunity for education with it. Yeah. So you get income, and that income goes out in how you spend it and how you give it away and how you save it. So we want to use our tool on your current behavior and show you how you can create a budget and how you can make little changes and adjustments that will help you live your purpose. Sure. Yeah. It makes sense, because what you're saying is really a lot. Most people, when they write their little household budget, they don't necessarily have in their, giving, right. Or they don't have, like rent they have, and insurance they have, and food, but they don't have giving necessarily, or they don't have savings even. And this helps them do that. That's terrific. So then you had to do the beta, and I think it was probably it might have been helping to fund the beta that when we did the second tranche. Yep. And this was a convertible debt instrument kind of thing. And I think you raised that for the beta, and that was about 2018. Is that, am I tracking right? You are tracking right, yes. Okay, and then now tell me, so you got a little bit of money for the beta, and so I know you went through lots of things as you were getting that fully developed. The beta went really well, and it went well because we were using Plaid, and at the time Plaid was pretty nascent into the data aggregation industry. So data aggregation, Yodlee was the biggest, and that's where they scrape your transactions every night, and they
provide them to financial institutions or to fintechs like us, and we use that information to help our app function. But with that,
And this is secure data that is appropriately scraped for reasons like to complete transactions for people.
yes, I mean all the large financial institutions use these organizations
Yeah.
to scrape data. In fact, Yodlee, who started I think 20 years ago, their technology is embedded within financial planners and financial advisors platforms, so that this is another thing, Steve, that started motivating me to move forward more quickly, is that my brother's a financial planner. He had this platform where we input all of my information, my mortgage, my checking, my credit cards, my insurance, and he had access to see all of my personal finances and could give me my net worth at a push of a button any day of the week. So I said, Peter, wait a minute, what if I say I want to change financial planners and move it to someone else? I have to do this all over again, right? He said, well, hell yeah, I paid a lot of money for this. And I thought, wait a second, I should control that information. Should control that data. I should give you access instead of having to move it around. And so that's when I realized, okay, we really got to nail this down. And so Yodlee and Plaid are data aggregators. There's other ones like FinCity. So we used Plaid. Since Yodlee was out there for, at that time, was like 15 years, they were the dinosaur. But I thought they were the Cadillac or the Mercedes. You know, I was really excited. I knew I wanted to move from Plaid to Yodlee when we came out with our MVP, our minimum viable product. So first error was not doing enough due diligence on Yodlee to realize what a dinosaur they were in their integrations, because when we changed over to them, everything broke. So Plaid was a smooth integration when you link your bank account. So in all these apps, whether it's Mint, Digit, Acorns, any of those, Robinhood,
These are all the things that people don't know about that are running the system
yeah,
that they're using
behind the scenes.
Behind
yeah.
the scenes. This is
They're
what
all
when you're
using
on internet banking, this is the kind of stuff that's operationalizing and executing for you on your behalf. It's these software
They're giving you
companies.
this user experience that allows you to engage with your data and your finances in ways that you could never otherwise do.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pull it all together, so they do it for you. So in doing so, that costs money to change that integration over. It also, we changed up how people were going to onboard, how they signed and linked into their bank, so that costs additional funds to do that. And then what we took forward with us was we also participated in an accelerator in Charlotte, North Carolina. And at that time, that resource there was helping to enrich and strengthen kind of our business model and I guess the user experience. I mean, it was an interesting experience.
So at this time, though, this is about 2018.
Right.
You're still learning and testing and developing a minimal product.
Minimum viable product, right?
Yeah.
That would be acceptable in the marketplace.
And then the people here in Red Wing, Minnesota, and that are kind of the people using it and working with you on these. You know,
Because
they're
they
the ones who are
trust,
putting
yeah.
information
Right.
in and trying to use it. And they're trying to figure out whether it works and all that kind of stuff.
Right. There's a lot of skepticism, of course, in when you're linking your bank accounts to something that you don't know is that secure.
Yeah.
And you can't blame people. I mean, there's so much going on. But we had all the security that was required to protect your data. You can't get on AWS, Amazon Web Services or web server, without meeting certain criteria. You can't get into the App Store without meeting certain criteria. So we had all of those protocols down. I can't remember what all the names of that security is, but in doing so, all of that costs money. So to your point about where does this money go? So when we engage with an organization like Plaid or Yodlee that scrapes your finances or your users' finances every day, you have to have a minimum amount, and we paid $2,000 a month for one of those vendors. AWS, you have to pay, it was about another close to $1,000. And then you have Dwala, which was doing our ACH processing. That was $500 a month. Then I had to pay my loan for the Port Authority back. I mean, there was all these payments that were just stiff in there while you're trying to prove and redevelop your product. You're spending so much money, but you're not getting very far very fast, because I couldn't hire the type of horsepower I needed within the development side of it, because that is extremely costly.
Yeah. So you were bootstrapping.
Bootstrapping, yes, all the way. You're asking people to do things and you're not paying them, and you're promising them an opportunity to potentially earn their money back through options. And I won't go down that track, but they're working for no pay, but they're building up presumably equity.
So you're in what we call kind of the valley of death, trying to survive, right? You're wandering
dark valley.
You're wandering the desert, trying to get that, spending money, trying to get the app work, trying to be frugal with the money that you have, which isn't much, and begging and borrowing and doing what you can to get the minimal viable product. And so after 2018, when did you get to the point that you felt you had a minimal viable product and you could really demonstrate how this would work for folks?
So once we hit the App Store, we demonstrated that it would work, that integration that everybody said could never work, it was too complicated, you're boiling the ocean, et cetera, it worked and people wanted to use it. But the problem now, I said, was Yodlee. So people would link their bank accounts and for a week it would work and then it would break. Why would it break? There's something that's called dual-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, where you have to, you get a text to your phone. Many people, and it depends on what your age is, had their home phone listed as their primary phone number at their bank. So you can't send a text to a landline.
Yeah, so they were asking for a text, but it was to their landline.
To the landline, and so it kept breaking. We couldn't find out why. That took us a long time to figure out why that was happening. But it kept breaking, and so it was. And every time we would fix something, it would be another week before we could test it again because everything batched in a week's process. It was so aggravating.
So
to
that's the world of software development, right? You're gonna try something and people are gonna use it, and an error is gonna pop up. Someone randomly, and they're gonna have to figure out what the error is. And
there's so many things that could cause that error. You don't know, and everything has to be dissected. So you really need that support team. When you have one person that is developing your app, one person, you might have some that are in India, we did, and the time zone is another thing, and communication and culture. But you have to constantly be dissecting where did that come from. You can fix that and you can break something else while you're fixing it.
Yeah. So then what was the next phase where you sort of reached a plateau of success that could prove a key milestone, and what was that milestone, and then what was the next achievement you had to get?
So interesting. We limped along for a good year using Yodlee, which was I kept wanting that to work because I saw Yodlee as our exit, because they were doing all of this stuff for the financial analysts and the financial advisors. I thought, we're perfect. We're the next stage for them to reach consumers, to be their consumer, business to consumer option or offering. So at that time, I kept going, but then we qualified for a grant from the Launch Minnesota. So Launch Minnesota was launched for the first time in 2019. And so we applied for their innovation grant fund, and we got approved for that at the end of 2019. We did not get the funding, and we were out of funding. I mean, I was having some investors and board members write checks every single month to try to help me keep the business going with AWS, with Plaid, and with Yodlee at the time. Dwala. So then when we got that innovation grant and COVID hit, we decided, wait a minute, let's keep and preserve that cash, take the app off the App Store so that money isn't going out every month. And then we decided that we would use that to redesign the app and the onboarding process and to switch to Plaid. And we were already in the process of switching to Plaid.
So basically you took your app kind of out the market.
Yeah.
So that you could go and re-architect it.
For a year, which I never thought it would be a year, but it was well worth it. I mean, COVID was a blessing to us in so many ways because it gave us that cover, if you will, for why we could take it off the App Store. I always thought that was a big failure and we'd never get back out there again. Nobody would believe in us, but anyway, it worked to our favor this time. And then we engaged with interns from higher ed here in southern Minnesota, with Winona State University, with St. Mary's University out of Rochester and Winona, and then St. Olaf College and University. These interns all had their programs shot down. So once COVID hit, these institutions like U.S. Bank, General Mills, they ended their internship programs. So we had an opportunity then to tap into these top talented, highly qualified students to be interns for us. So we identified students that aligned with each one of our pillars. So we would have someone that's interested in data analytics, someone that's interested in marketing, someone that's interested in coding with us, and then we aligned them to our peer leaders. And so it was what I said was co-mentoring, because our leaders would teach strategy, systems, structure, risk management to these students. At the same time, they were learning from the students who was our target audience, or a portion of our segment of our target audience. And so it was fascinating on how we were learning from each other as we were going along. It was one of the best things that could have happened from us, and I really truly believe that the ecosystem, if you will, the startup ecosystem, needs to look at that more deeply and more intentionally on how to engage these students, whether it's even in high school. We had one high school student from Rochester who was a real prodigy. I mean, she was fantastic on how she came alongside and gave us her insights and even did some coding, but she was really working in our CRM system. So anyway, that's what we did to get to the next level.
So then tell me a little bit about the process that you went through that maybe you didn't even know you were in this process until after it started, that culminated in the acquisition by the Michigan State University Credit Union.
Yeah, I mean, what a ride, and it has been now almost a year. So I pitched every event, you know that, and I'm not a very good pitcher, if you will. And so when COVID hit, that was another benefit of COVID. I could do it virtually. And that took me off a stage, which I don't like to stand on a stage, which didn't look like that last night though. But we pitched to a group called the MDC, which is the Member Development Corp or something like that. It's a group of credit unions that are looking at new technologies to help the credit union industry. And so we always wanted a strategic investor. I never ever wanted to have a venture capital investment, because they aren't looking at the organization as a whole. They're looking at money, you know, their return. They don't really care, and they're managing other people's money. I totally get that. But we wanted someone that shared our values, that we were checking a box, that they were looking for technology that could deliver on their values and their mission. And so the credit union industry, I found an old deck that I did back in 2015 where I said, why credit unions? And credit unions align with our values because they're giving back to their community. They're not a profit-driven organization. They're nonprofits. They're about giving back to their members, and their members are they live and work and worship in their communities, and so it's all about this synergistic relationship. And so it was perfect. They saw us, and then we met and discussed, hey, would you like to pilot our technology? And Yep, we'll do that. So September we pitched, October was our first meeting. Yes, they'll pilot our program. November was the next meeting. I said, okay, well, we're looking for a savings account. We wanted an easy way for people to set up a savings if they didn't have it, because 65% of millennials didn't have savings accounts. They used their checking account to do that, or Venmo. So they said, yeah, we'd love to be your savings account. That's great. You know, new customers for us. All right. Then the next month is, well, if you're going to do that, would you be interested in doing our ACH processing, you know, processing all the payments that would come through the app? Yeah, we'd like to do that. That was December. Well, then I said, well, if you're going to do that, we're coming out with a round now. We're raising $2.5 million. Would you like to invest in that round? Yeah, we were actually thinking about starting a fund. So as you heard from April Klobus last night, the CEO of the Michigan State University Federal Credit Union, she said that they were assessing what they were going to do with fintech, and they were looking at different fintechs, but they couldn't invest as a credit union. Right. And so this now was a spark for them to start and create a holding company that was kind of a buffer or firewall between the credit union and our business. And so that's how that got started.
Right. So there's restrictions on financial institutions on how they can or cannot make equity investments because there's like a firewall in the financial world between lenders and equity providers for all kinds of complicated reasons. But what I think is so interesting, and April talked about it, is here was a financial institution that had a vision about getting into developing fintech type opportunities to bring to the credit union marketplace, and you were the spark that created that required them to create a new entity, a holding company, in order to be able to implement that strategy. And then you were the first acquisition really for that strategy. So they talked about this last night. They talked about, for them, the importance for acquiring you was shared values and vision. And so maybe, and that's been a theme throughout your history. So talk a little bit about your thinking in terms of resource allocation, resource acquisition, in fact, even hiring and firing and letting people go, and how values and vision are so important to you, and how you sort of navigate that in your daily life.
Yeah, you have to know what your values are so that you can understand and align them with your investors, with your board of directors, with the people that you hire, because if you're not values aligned, you're not going to be able to have healthy, robust conversations and difficult conversations when you come to a crossroads on which direction you should go, whether it be strategic, organizational, or tactical. And so if your values aligned, you can have those conversations that draw them back to the values. Does this align with our values? Does this align with our core mission and our core beliefs? And so I had aligned myself with some board members, one board member in particular that I thought we were values aligned and ended up not being, and that was a disaster. And
I think I remember some conversations.
Yeah, yes, and you helped me through them, honestly, Steve. So that was one aspect of it, and then also, one thing I would say is never, and I was counseled this and I didn't believe it, I think you were one that said it, is don't have your lawyer be on your board. Your lawyer needs to be able to give you unvarnished, unbiased advice, and there can't be any conflict of interest. And I had that going on my board. And it didn't come up until the very end of it. So when we would tap into resources out there to engage with our organization and deliver their expertise, so we had technology, we had banking, we had marketing, PR, investment, and then in the startup community. So that was, and I'll tell you what, when you get board members, when you have investors, you want people that have had, hopefully, some element of experience within the startup realm. Your advice is going to be so different when you get people that understand from where you're at, where you're coming from, where you're at, and where you're going. People that have just been in the corporate world or haven't worked at all but are wealthy, their advice, while it might be helpful in some ways and good, and you have to listen, it doesn't have the context of what you're going through as a gritty entrepreneur, and they don't understand. Yeah. You have to have everything perfect in their mind. It's like, you need to do this, you need to do this. Yes, I want to do all of that, but
we have a saying in the equity world, the side that I sit on mostly, is that you have two kinds of investors. Even you have the entrepreneurs that have made money and now are investors, and what they've done in their lifetime is they sat down on a Friday and they called every single customer they know to collect their receivables so they could make payroll on Monday. Yeah. And then you have the professional managers, where they went in and they had corporations that actually had resources, and they did grow those, but they had access to capital and access to management expertise and really the authority that startups don't really have. Mm-hmm. And so their context is just different, because they're managers, not risk takers. Right. And the entrepreneurs they understand the risk takers. So that's important. So tell me, so speaking of that advice, tell me, these are three connected questions. So I'd like you to tell me one sage, insightful piece of advice that was important to you and made a difference to you, and that you accepted and implemented. I'd like you to tell me one piece of what would be sage advice, but you rejected, and why you rejected it. Because there's often you get good advice, but you shouldn't necessarily proceed to take that advice. And then if you were going to provide another entrepreneur with some of your own sage advice, what would that be? So 3 interrelated questions.
So the advice on what I got and what I took and what I kept with that would be probably, know your true north. I mean, I got that all the time about focus, focus, focus. Just stay focused. And I would get that from people that I greatly admired. And, stick with it. If you believe in it, stick with it. And then just, you can, push it forward by remaining focused and not get distracted. It's so easy to get distracted. Now, the second part of this kind of relates to that and it almost contradicts it, which is our app is an all-in-one app. So you might recall, there was a lot of discussion around boiling the ocean. Can you just focus on one thing because it looks like you're fractured and you don't know what you're doing and all this. It was just all this advice, and I couldn't listen to it because I knew exactly what I was trying to do. I was trying to create organization out of chaos because you're opening up now 5 different apps at a minimum. There's many other apps that you could do to do a lot of other things that our one app could do. You walk into a bank, do you just go in there to make a deposit? No. You get a mortgage, you can get insurance, you can get savings, you can get a credit card, you can get all these things. Why not have that when you open up an app, you're walking through a door of a bank?
So some people saw you as unfocused and chaotic.
Yeah.
In your mind, you're going, no, the whole point of this is to take that unfocused and chaotic stuff and make it into an app that allows people to be more focused.
Exactly.
And,
we give control.
And so your true north was that element of it. And so the context is that it wasn't that it was bad advice. It was just inappropriate advice for the insight that you had that you felt where the market will be.
So why did I name my company Live.Give.Save? That's kind of a ding-dong name. I never liked it for a company or a product name or a brand name. It was really to explain to investors what we're doing and that giving is at the center of what we're doing. But it's about how to live your life the way that you want, to give to the causes that you care about, and to save for a future that's secure. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to convey to investors of what we were trying to achieve. I always knew we would create a different brand for the product, which is SPAVE. You mentioned that earlier.
Right.
So
and talk about how that was put together. It's 2 words put together.
Yeah, a portmanteau is when you take 2 words and you make them into one. So SPAVE, S-P-A-V-E, is 2 words of spending and saving put together to create SPAVE. But it's also an acronym, and it goes back to your point about values. It stands for sharing, purpose, and value every day. So we believe every person has a purpose, and that how we spend our money tells us what's important to us, what are our priorities. If we have ready access to knowledge that is relevant to us, we will make more informed, healthy decisions, and we will live, give, and save with purpose. So that's our core beliefs in a nutshell. But what we're doing is putting control, choice, confidence, and convenience and community in the palm of the person's individual's hand. Control is number 1, and that's what we heard in all of our research, and choice were the top 2.
Great. So what advice would you give a budding entrepreneur based on what you've experienced so far?
So I believe that all strategy is rooted in research, and so you have something that's been tickling your fancy or gnawing at you for years. You feel like there's a problem that you want to solve, something that you want to do. You need to validate that, and you can validate that very inexpensively to begin with. So you do your research. You go to talk to people. You talk to individuals that are within that realm, that are in that segment or that industry. Get information, read articles, follow experts that are in that, and talk to people that are doing something similar. And so those are the things. You get yourself as educated as you possibly can, and then write things down. Keep a journal of what you're thinking about at all times. You'll go back on that. You will reflect on it. I go back to some of my writings, and I'm astounded in some of the pictures that you might have seen on the video last night. I have pictures of all of the whiteboards that I've done over the years. It's crazy. And a lot of them were here in this very building and in this room. And you just never know where those ideas are going to take you. And so please, do your research, validate your ideas, talk to people, listen, and just keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, great advice. And finally, well, congratulations, but one more time, go over for the folks that are listening to this where they can download the app, and then what expectations they should have when they download the app.
Yeah, you can go to either the App Store or Google Play. That was another thing that we did that we're out in Google Play. Download the app and you link your bank accounts and you identify what.
And what's the name of the app again?
The app is SPAVE, SPAVE, sharing purpose and value every day. And just link your bank accounts and identify what you want to save for your future, vacation or whatever, what you want to give to. You can choose from up to we have a database of 1.5 million accredited charities, so if your charity is accredited that you like, it's in there. You can search by your cause, what's important to you. Is it climate? Is it education? Is it international? Is it the tragedy and the issues and the crises in Haiti or Afghanistan? You can find that, and we have charities that you can support in that. I also wanted to reinforce, though, Steve, about the Reseda Group and the credit union, Michigan State Credit Union, Federal Credit Union. This morning we had a debrief about what did we see, what did we learn, what did we hear last night. In April, the CEO of the credit union said she was amazed by what she heard from the people in that room, that was about how supportive the ecosystem was of startup entrepreneurs and of founders, and that people will invest in people that they trust. And the type of a blanket, she said, of support that came around me in particular. So now when they're analyzing new technologies and new startup founders, they're going to be looking at what is in that community, what is surrounding them.
So that's great. I'm glad that you brought that up, because the mission of the Appalachian Investor Alliance and the mission of the work I've done has been exactly that. It's, for 40 years I've been telling people, that we have good, smart young people that have ideas, and we do have capital. We have to get together and organize it, and then we have to teach people how to think about this so that we can help people be successful. And it takes a community. It takes a lot of different people.
It takes a village.
It takes a village. Yep. It takes Red Wing Ignite and the Port Authority and the local banker and the Red Wing Shoes and the you mentioned the hairdresser that would come and help you get ready and a lot of different. There's a lot of people and a lot of things that happen to help something get over the threshold. But you also mentioned this. Here's what always seems to be common, is that they have a shared value and vision, and that you create a trust and understanding. So if you are able to create trust and understanding in that shared vision, you're able to acquire resources around you to hopefully help you achieve your goals. And you've done that, and I congratulate you. And I think Red Wing is going to enjoy seeing the growth of this company as you go into your next phase with your company, the Michigan State University or Federal Credit Union. So congratulations, and thank you for taking time and sharing our story with you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that, and I also want to acknowledge and appreciate what you do for founders and startups like myself. We wouldn't have this. We talked early on. You've been there all with me throughout all of this. There's a reason why it's called angel investors. They are angels indeed, and everyone that was in that room last night was an angel in a different aspect.
Yeah,
so.
That's great. Well, thank you.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. And be sure you go and check that like sign. You know how this works in this business. The more likes you have, the better off you are, and the more people will notice it. And we're doing this for a cause, to raise money for this fellowship program that I told you about. Stay tuned in to our social media channel, YouTube, Facebook, and don't forget to donate. It goes to a good cause. Only 3,700 miles to Portland, Maine. Woohoo!